Rear Admiral Grace Hopper set the precedent for computer engineering during a time in which women were still tied to the domestic sphere of American life. Born in New York in 1906, Grace Hopper quickly became a strong student, studying math and physics at Vassar College. After graduating, she continued her studies at Yale, receiving her master's and eventually her PhD in mathematics. This was an astounding accomplishment during the time because she was one of the first women to gain such a high level of mathematical education. Hopper's career began to have a major influence during World War II. After joining the Navy at 37 years old, she was placed into the Bureau of Ordnance Computation Project at Harvard, with the hopes of programming the first computer, the Mark I. Her work on the project improved the potential of the computer, making a machine that functioned under the command of humans. This computer played an extremely important role in the course of World War II, calculating mathematical tables to design military equipment.
World War II was a war of science. And in order to have a war of science, it becomes a war of mathematics as well. So some of the most important problems that needed to be solved were ballistics tables.
In addition, this computer determined calculations for the design of the atomic bomb, created in the Manhattan Project, ensuring accuracy for the most lethal weapon ever made. These innovations would not have been possible without Grace Hopper. She played an influential role in building the massive computer structure, one that would eventually determine America's victory over the Axis powers during the war.
She finds out after the war that she had solved the implosion problem for the nuclear bomb. This is the same bomb that is then dropped on Japan, and 6 days later the war ends.
Unfortunately, Grace Hopper did not gain adequate recognition because she was a trailblazer in a field that had only recently started to develop, and a woman during a time in which men dominated American industry.
She came to computing when computing was not a discipline, it was not a profession.
Grace Hopper was way ahead of her time.
After World War II, Hopper continued to work with computers and eventually helped create the first computer language that used English, COBOL. This common business-oriented language helped standardize computer languages so that different companies' devices could interact, aiding in the advancement of the computer overall.
I've driven a large number of people at least partially nuts. After all, insisting on talking to computers in plain English was a totally ridiculous idea, and you couldn't do that, except it worked.
By the year 2000, 70% of all active code in the world is COBOL code.
She worked as the head of the software division for the first commercial electronic computer, the UNIVAC 1, creating a pathway for all computers that were to come. A breakthrough device, the UNIVAC allowed for more efficient computations and data storage, in turn creating a device that accurately predicted the 1952 presidential election. After her work on the UNIVAC computer, Hopper continued to improve America's programming systems, eventually becoming the first woman to receive the National Medal of Technology. Without Grace Hopper, America's achievements during World War II would have been vastly different, changing the course of American history. A visionary in her field, Grace Hopper defied stereotypes that existed about computing during the mid-20th century and made the field more accessible to progress, especially for women. Her accomplishments in computer programming led to the programs that control our computers, phones, security, and other technological devices that allow for an immensely global and connected world. Without Grace Hopper, what would your life be like?